there is a tragic symmetry to the underlying problem that gave rise to this legislation. The foreign entities whose assets would be frozen by Canada are frequently the same entities whose actions or even inaction cause the circumstances that would lead to their assets being frozen in the first place. It is a vicious cycle of greed, theft, corruption, violence, persecution, human flight, and displacement. Bill S-259 seeks to break that cycle by freezing and then repurposing the ill-gotten gains of dictators and other bad actors who are at the root of the global displacement crisis, and use these various reclaimed assets to help people forced from their homes as well as their hosts in new countries. Based on the principles of accountability, justice, due process, openness, compassion, and good governance, this bill would bring an end to the impunity corrupt foreign actors have enjoyed far too long, and will bring relief to those these officials have so grievously harmed. Le meilleur exemple récent ayant capté l'attention du monde.
The best example, and that it has captured so much attention recently, is Venezuela. As Senator Omidvar outlined in her speech, the regime of President Maduro has forced well over 3 million people to flee their homes since 2014, when the economic crisis began. This mass migration has hugely impacted several of Venezuela's neighbors in South America. Colombia alone has received 1 million migrants, while Peru is hosting 500,000. While Venezuelans have largely been welcomed by these countries, their hosts still face significant challenges.
In the case of Venezuela, Canada already has taken the step of freezing assets held by President Maduro. This bill would allow the courts, if it is deemed appropriate based on due process and reasonable evidence, to seize these assets and then distribute the funds to Venezuelans displaced by the regime, to host countries, and/or to NGOs working to help.
One of the biggest benefits of this bill is the creation of a public registry. Provided for in Section 4, the Minister of Foreign Affairs would be required to make publicly available the name of the person or entity whose assets had been frozen, and the value of those assets.
Our own country, and many others around the world, harbors in various forms the wealth stolen from institutions by dictators and other corrupt officials. Bill S-259 would be but one tool at our disposal to prevent and punish the damaging practice of base erosion and profit shifting, aka BEPS. We heard about that earlier today. There is also the issue of beneficial ownership, which the Panama Papers brought to the world's attention in 2016. While not illegal in and of itself, beneficial ownership has been used to hide illegal activity. The Panama Papers brought into stark focus the prevalence of its use for nefarious purposes. Canada has become a tax haven largely because of the positive reputation of our governmental and financial institutions and our generally strong economy. Corrupt foreign officials steal and embezzle from institutions in their own countries and thus take from their fellow citizens. They then negatively use beneficial ownership to create shell companies in Canada to pay less tax on their assets and/or to hide their ill-gotten gains. By shifting profits, legitimate or otherwise, from higher tax jurisdictions to ones with lower taxes like Canada, the tax base in the originating country is eroded. This further hurts populations suffering at the hands of corrupt leaders. It also means that the lower tax country benefits from the theft of the First Nations' wealth and resources. Those rules need to be strengthened, but until they are, the fact remains that the plundered assets in various forms are being housed and enriched in our country. This legislation will go a long way toward reversing the trend and doing some good in the world by helping to alleviate the suffering of far too many people.